Can Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator be the key to exposing his sex ring? Blaze News The Mandate starts right now. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Jill Savage, joined, as always, by Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson.
You know, I thought we were done with Epstein, but it's never ending.
It is never ending, and it's this man's favorite topic, our politics editor out in D.C., Chris Bedford.
How'd you know? It's my favorite.
It is. It's, you know what? But at least we have some new news today. You know, President Trump, he made it pretty clear, right? Like, there's one side of the Epstein files, and then Trump's like, we can be done, right? He's on the Chris Bedford train. But right now, it looks like he's actually ready to release some credible info and give the public the transparency that we have all been asking for. And now, AG Pam Bondi has directed the DOJ to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's longtime partner and alleged recruiter. So, Matt, we have so much news that's coming out that despite Bedford and Trump's best wishes, we're still talking about it here on this show.
Well, look, I mean, I think that I think the White House has made a strong statement. The administration over the last few days that they are interested in transparency. They want to hear. They want to answer some of the questions that are out there. And this is really sensational. I mean, we live in this time where, as I say, people used to say nothing ever happens. Well, everything happens all the time in the Trump news cycle 2.0. So talking to Maxwell is the kind of thing that's sensational in the sense that everyone's going to be talking about it. Everyone's going to know what she has to say. And it's a very interesting legal sort of. I mean, it's an interview to find out more. I mean, how will this actually? What questions will they ask? How will this play out? It's fascinating, and that's why everyone's talking about it. And they're not gonna stop. And what you notice, though, is the Trump administration staunched the bleeding. So right now, everyone's talking about what they're actually doing. And then we also have Tulsi doing some very serious stuff when it comes to collusion. So we see that the ship is righted, and the walls were never closing in on Donald Trump, for the last time.
So the news things that happened today, let's go ahead and break it down for everybody. Deputy AG Todd Blanche came out on X and said that justice demands courage. For the first time, DOJ is actually reaching out to Maxwell, asking, what do you know? And Pam Bondi's direction, I've contacted her counsel. I intend to meet with her soon. No one is above the law, and no lead is off limits. And shortly after that post came out, Chris, the House Oversight Committee voted to subpoena Maxwell over the Epstein files. And then we get from Maxwell's lawyer, David Marcus, says that he can confirm that we are in discussions with the government, that Ghislaine will always testify truthfully. We are grateful to President Trump for his commitment to uncovering the truth in this case. So there's a lot moving forward. Will this lead to anything, Chris?
I mean, it certainly could. It certainly could. She's going to name names. The question is, what evidence could be provided for actual prosecutions, which is always a risk now that the administration faces. The thing about Maxwell, Madam Maxwell, is that she's got no dog in this fight. She could be interested in revenge. She could be interested in chaos. She could be interested in hurting Donald Trump. She could be interested in helping the cause for truth. Maybe she's had just a huge turnaround in prison and said, I really need to get right with the Lord and figure this out. I'm somewhat suspicious of that. I think that her motivations are, of course, as with many criminals who talk to prosecutors, are going to be entirely out for herself. She was never offered a plea deal. She was sentenced to prison. She might try to go for a lesser sentence. And in order to do that, she's going to have to hand over names, which is always a sort of duress that causes someone's testimony to not always be entirely truthful. I mean, you saw that ridiculous Wall Street Journal article, the expose that had that strange esoteric comic that was supposedly written by Donald Trump in a voice that no one has ever heard from the most public figure in the world for 10 years now. But where did that come from? Did that come from the Department of Justice or some disgruntled agents? We know that it was in their files. Or did it come from Maxwell's team and her lawyers? We know that they had a binder that she kept the binder that included that card, supposedly at least. So you have to wonder what this woman's motivations are before she comes forward And here's the risk in general of the client list, of course, is going to be very interesting. The list of people who went to the island is broad. The list of people who went to the island includes artisans, includes workers, includes staff. And then you're going to have the whole question of, well, a 16-year-old girl who refuses to go on the record and refuses to press charges, understandably, considering how many people involved with this case have mysteriously died by by suicide, supposedly. They don't want to press charges. What if they name, as we all strongly suspect, former President Bill Clinton, for example? All right, well, what happens next? Does the MAGA base that's been really angry about the release of these files now get the files, just come suddenly quiet down? Or they demand the arrest of Bill Clinton with no one willing to press charges and the evidence of a woman who won't come forward? So we could find some great stuff here. I think we will. We'll definitely find some juicy stuff. It'll be worth the clicks, worth the views. But is it going to tidy up the administration's mess? So that's a different question entirely.
Well, it seems like there's one thought, there in the White House and another thought there up on Capitol Hill last week. Let's go ahead and take a look. Rebecca Zelko asked several members of Congress about this very thing, about Ghislaine Maxwell coming potentially in front of Congress. Take a look.
There have been rumors about Ghislaine Maxwell potentially testifying before Congress, and the Speaker just recently, earlier today, he said that he would be in favor of saying something like that. Is that something that you'd be interested in?
100%. But I'd like to hear what her attorneys say. I don't know if that's something the Democrats have said or she said. I haven't heard her spokespersons or any person, but heck yeah, get her up here. Let's talk.
I don't know what kind of witness that she's going to be and how reliable even what she's going to tell you is, if it's going to involve cutting a deal or something like that. I don't know. But I would, no question, the information she would have and the insights that she would have would be very valuable and interesting for the American people to hear.
Would you like to see this testimony?
I'm happy to see that. Again, transparency is the way that we disinfect Washington, D.C.
It's a good point, Matt. We need some of this transparency out there in D.C. right now.
We do. I mean, when it comes to Maxwell, it's all eyes will be on her. What kind of transparency will she provide, though? And that's an interesting question. I mean, there are people out there who go so far as to say that she was the instigator. She was the brains behind the operation. And the evidence they use for that is not really evidence of that. But it is true that her father, Robert Maxwell, newspaper publisher, was also someone who's very much involved with several intelligence agencies, no doubt about it. So, look, the basic thing that you would expect is that she's going to come out and defend herself. She hasn't really been allowed to do that. There was no plea deal. No previous administration has talked to her. Nothing was really dangled in front of her. She was just sent to the pokey for all these crimes. She's the only one who took the fall for everything that went around with Epstein. So, you imagine she would want to come out and defend herself. At the very least, she's going to have her time in the sun, and everyone's going to be listening.
Final thoughts, Bedford, on Maxwell and Epstein, at least for today's show.
Oh, well, Robert Maxwell's a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah, it is. We don't have enough time for that one.
Connects it all, isn't it? The famous wealthy millionaire businessman who never visited Israel but was buried on the Mount of Olives when he passed. An interesting person and maybe a key to why so many people in Washington don't want to learn more.
They have their reasons. Okay.
What will his daughter say?
Well, this is going to be a story that we are definitely going to have to continue some other time. So. Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made a lot of progress, and they've done so really quickly. But they're focused on restoring America. They can't focus on protecting your personal savings. That's still your responsibility. One of the smartest ways to safeguard what you've worked for is through diversification, especially with gold from our trusted friends over at Birch Gold Group. Now, in the last 12 months, gold's value has increased by 40%. Central banks around the world are driving demand demand even higher by buying gold in record amounts. Global instability, geopolitical tension, they're the highest that they've been in decades. That's why Birch Gold makes owning physical gold extremely easy. You can convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA backed by real gold, or simply purchase physical gold to store in your home. Just text my name, Jill, to the number 989898, and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. Now, there's no obligation. It's only useful information. They have an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers. So take control of your savings today. Text my name, Jill, to the number 989898. Chris, just about every high-profile Democrat has been named. There's names that are going out all over, right? 2028, it's never too early to talk about the presidential ticket. But one name that hasn't been mentioned is Obama's chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel. Now, he went on the Megyn Kelly show, so let's go ahead and watch what he has to say about transgenderism.
Can a man become a woman?
Can a man become a woman? No.
Thank you.
No.
That's so easy. Why don't more people in your party just say that?
Because I'm now going to go into a witness protection plan.
This is interesting. Anytime a Democrat comes out and says what we are all thinking, you have to go, okay, is he trying to be the moderate candidate right now, Chris?
Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on him for a while. As a potential dark horse candidate for the next Democratic nomination. And he was someone who was floated previously. I remember Republicans who were totally panicked about Donald Trump in 2016 saying, listen, don't be so mean to Rahm Emanuel, who was hard on Republicans, very hard as chief of staff of President Barack Obama, because he's the kind of guy who's going to be the leader of a centrist party when there's no such thing as a GOP anymore because Donald Trump has ruined it all. Of course, those people were wrong about there being no such thing as a GOP and Donald Trump ruining it, but they were corrupt about him still kind of holding that law and order, old-fashioned Democrat flank in the Democratic Party. Remember, he's the guy who got a very hard-nosed reputation on Capitol Hill, one time famously confronting a senator in the showers at the gym of the Senate gym while every man was naked and getting in his face, pointing at him and yelling at him about his vote. That's the kind of guy, the kind of aggressive person he is. And he brought that politics to Chicago, where he was mayor. It wasn't so well received by a lot of the progressives in Chicago. And I think while he was doing his best to really try to clean up that city as best as you can do, it wasn't popular. So he left office, and he's not been in the spotlight for some time, but he's routinely been a voice for this. Remember when Gavin Newsom came out and tried to test the waters on no, men shouldn't compete in women's sports, and he had to essentially go into that witness protection program, and he had to recant in public and all this and that. The only person who would go on the record of the many Democrats who believe this, the only one who would go on the record and say, Gavin's right, was Rahm. Mm-hmm. Of course, people weren't paying too much attention because he's not actually holding public office at the time, and it's very difficult for someone like that to actually get legs to really be able to take the nomination. But it'd be an interesting fight because he will look like the same person on the stage if he makes it.
Yeah, exactly right. What's interesting about Rahm Emanuel is he stands out. When you see that interview with Megyn Kelly, he stands out because he's actually a man. Like, he has a pair, and he always has. And he's someone who actually can get things done. Like, this is not an influencer. This is a dude who can do stuff and make things happen. So that alone is refreshing, right? Kudos to him. But of course, the great question is there enough support in, elite support on the left, or, moving to the left for this kind of thing? Does everyone else have the same stomach for it that he might? I don't know.
Well, when you think of men that can get things done, I don't think that Hunter Biden's name comes up, but he can definitely get himself in a boardroom, and he can definitely get himself a huge paycheck. Now, he just had some very interesting interviews that came out. He went scorched earth on Joe Biden's party. Let's go ahead and take a look at that.
And James Carville, who hasn't run a race in 40 years, and David Axelrod, who had one success in his political life, and that was Barack Obama. And that was because of Barack Obama, not because of David Axelrod and David Plouffe and all of these guys and the Pod Save America guys who were junior speechwriters on Barack Obama's Senate staff who've been dining out on the relationship with him for years, making millions of dollars. The Anita Dunns of the world, who's made $40-50 million off the Democratic Party. They're all going to insert their judgment over a man who has figured out, unlike anybody else, how to get elected to the United States Senate over 7 times.
Chris, he's an angry elf. He's going out there. He looks like, okay, this is not a man who has received a presidential pardon and his paintings went for what, like $500,000. Guys, Hunter, buddy, you are going scorched earth on the Democratic Party, who has made your life so easy and convenient for what it was.
Oh, but then they turned on them when they were no longer useful, and they turned on each other. Of course, Hunter's not known for introspection. He's not the kind of person, as far as I can tell, who, at least publicly, is going to sit down there and say, well, here's all the things that I did wrong. Here's all the ways that my family personally enriched themselves. Here's the way that my family damaged the Democratic Party. And the kind of funny thing about this whole thing is I don't really disagree with anything he said there. He's largely correct about everyone who he named off on that list of people who turned on them, that list of people he really dislikes. I'm not exactly sure why he gave that interview to his drug dealer, but it's fine. It's just a weird look. Now, one critique I will have of his critique is I have no real problem with men cursing, but you need to do it well. You can't sound like a petulant teenager who's angry at mom and dad. And Hunter Biden, maybe it's because it comes across too much. It's just a filler word. But he needs to learn how to curse well. The Dick Cheney method. Use it sparingly. And when you do, in public at least, when you do, make it count.
Listen, all I'm going to take from that is mark it down on your calendars, everybody at home. July 22nd is the day that Chris Bedford agrees with Hunter Biden. That's all I'm going to take away, Matt.
Well, I hope you agreed with what he said about crack versus cocaine. It's very interesting to me. Obviously, a world-class expert in these topics. Hunter is always he's charismatic. He's always entertaining. The one problem with his list, I agree with Chris. I agree with everything he said about all these Democrats, campaign operatives making money, Anita Dunn making tens of millions of dollars. It's just he neglected to mention another family that has done the same thing for a long time, grifting off of American politics and accepting millions of dollars from foreign countries, or painting paintings that were $500,000 a piece. Hunter is always going to be entertaining, though, and I think the main takeaway from this was he's sort of toothless right at this point. Hopefully not from the drugs. He's got a way about him that's amusing. Trump acknowledged that, and it's the sad part of this though. Is that, after the 15 minutes, and I'm sure he's not going away. We're going to see more of this guy doing clownish things. The sad part is that he felt as if he could do this shamelessly. When you look at his life, you think, wouldn't you want to just go somewhere quiet and, build something and work out the rest of your life outside of the media eye after everything you've done? But as Chris said, introspection, not one of his strong suits.
All right, let's close out this Democrat lightning round. Before we let you go, Chris, let's go ahead and watch Stephen Colbert. Pour one out. The Late Show has been canceled. Here's Jon Stewart's very adult reaction.
Go f*** yourself! Wait, bring it down. Let's bring it down. Let it be quiet. Yourself, just go yourself.
Well, you were talking about Democrats and cursing. Have at it.
Some timing. What a childish tantrum. What a stupid look. What a goofy dance. What a dumb opinion. I'm sorry, your friends don't get to make millions and millions of dollars, costing the network $40 million a year with a declining, aging, dying audience and such incredibly low influence on all of those late night shows that the only way you even hear about what was said in the late night shows is the news companies that are paid by their corporate overlords to repeat what the late night shows host said as if it's somehow news and try to insert it artificially into the news cycle. Well, I mean, Jon Stewart, just another one of those many examples of why I hope to someday be able to retire before I, like everyone else in this industry, become a caricature of myself.
Matt, when I think of like the Colbert Show, I think of like the vaccine dance that he was doing, and how are we ever going to survive without the brilliance of one Stephen Colbert?
And truth to power.
Well, I mean, I'm not ashamed to say I've never watched the full episode, but you know, some people did. I mean, it's what 2 million households now is. You know, it's down. But the sad part about this, you know, F off and all this shenanigans, these people going nuts about this, who are on the left, is they're acting like they're rebels of some kind. Like, oh, the big network canceled us. Like the big network subsidized propaganda for a long time until it didn't work. And the big picture on this is in 2016, the media decided to just, you know, pull all the levers. So the engine was going to be revved up to red, all the way up to 11, go as hard as they could, knowing full well that that would break things eventually, but it was sort of nonstop, every man to this post, pure propaganda, and eventually the engine breaks down, it runs out of fuel, and that's what's happened. So it's particularly grating to hear these guys say like they're being rebels and like screw the man for canceling Colbert. You guys had a great ride. Like you wrote it, you took your money, you said what they wanted you to say, and now I'd like you guys to F off. I don't want to hear from you anymore.
Yeah, I had a personal protest. I would never watch Jimmy Kimmel clips or Stephen Colbert clips. Now, the only time that I made an exception for this was when Claire Danes was on with Stephen Colbert, and I actually just re-upped this a few days ago on X because she's out there talking about how she was working with the CIA and figuring out how to make her character better for Homeland. And she's like, oh yeah, we were out with the actual spooks and they were doing this and they were doing that. And sometimes they work in the media, and Stephen Colbert's like, whoa, no, change the subject. That to me was as good as TV gets, because somebody who isn't supposed to be saying all the things just accidentally said all the things on TV.
Media, politics, think tanks. It's almost like you certainly couldn't take over any major DC think tanks and try to make any cuts to their foreign affairs department, because that would upset the CIA.
That's what we're going to do here. You know what? Sometimes it needs to happen. Bedford, I hope that they don't find you overnight. I hope that you can actually just go through, make sure that you make it back here tomorrow on the show, because you're much closer to them than we are.
Just don't cut my international travel budget to Ukraine, which is entirely necessary for Blaze TV.
It is.
That's all I ask.
It's a necessary line item budget. We need to have it. Bedford, thanks so much. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll get into more of the Russia hoax. There is still a lot of information coming out right after this. Well, let's be real. We're living in a time when telling the truth actually feels pretty risky. All the lies are dressed up as compassion, and if you speak honestly, they call it hate. The media tries to sell all of this as tolerance, but we know better. At Blaze TV, we're not playing that game. We're telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's not popular, because staying silent is not an option. So on this show and across Blaze TV network, we are going beyond the headlines. We're not just going to react. We're actually really going to dig into what's going on and who's behind it. And you're not going to get that from the corporate media. They've picked a side, and honestly, it's not yours. But we're here to push back with all the facts and conviction. It's not just about making content. For us, it's a mission. So when you subscribe to Blaze TV, you're not just supporting conservative voices. You're standing with a movement that refuses to back down. It's only $8 a month when you use the promo code BNT. That's $20 off a yearly plan, and it breaks down to just 26 cents a day to support the truth. So go to blazetv.com/BNT and sign up today, because the truth matters, and the people in power are working overtime to shut it down.
Well, based on what I read, and I read pretty much what you read, it would be President Obama. He started it. And Biden was there with him, and Comey was there, and Clapper. The whole group was there. Brennan, they were all there in a room right here. This was the room.
It's the whole group. They were right there. It's one of the biggest conspiracy theories in American history that's now unraveling right before our eyes. So for the latest on the Russia collusion hoax is Paul Sperry. He's a senior reporter for Real Clear Investigation. So Paul, thanks so much for joining us right now. I think a lot of people, we've been familiar with this story for a while, but now we have the actual evidence proving what we kind of thought we knew. So let's start with the big picture. Lay out the 50,000-foot view for us of what we got from these documents.
These are the documents from ODNI and before that CIA, and they're adding to a growing body of evidence for a conspiracy that they're pursuing at the FBI, building a conspiracy case for corruption, conspiracy of corruption. Because we'll start with the ICA, that's the intelligence community assessment, that Obama ordered after the election, and the conclusions were reversed from low confidence that Putin was involved in influencing the election to help Trump, to all of a sudden they had high confidence, and a lot of analysts were wondering, well, what has changed? And they weren't even told what the evidence was. They were excluded from what the new evidence supposedly was, this secret evidence. And it turned out it was Hillary's dirty dossier. In other words, political opposition research that she had tied Putin to Trump. And so the ICA was cooked up to echo those conclusions, as it turns out. So we're finding more and more that ICA is looking more and more fraudulent by the day, something that was used to frame Trump, kind of, make him look like he was too compromised as president to effectively govern. And then it laid the foundation for a number of, countless investigations that followed and, really crippled his presidency, crippled his agenda, his mandate.
Yeah, mandate. We like that. We like that word here at the Mandate. This is astounding to me in some ways that the timing of all this rushing back. But it's not surprising that the final reckoning had not yet occurred. And you've been following this for a long time, as have many others. And it's refreshing to see ODNI actually, push this out and give us some movement and traction.
Absolutely. It's been bottled up for 8 years, and the dam is finally breaking, and the tables are turning on the bad guys.
So tell us about those bad guys. I mean, particularly in this case, we know from Brennan's notes that Obama was filled in on Hillary's plan to link Trump to Russia, right? And Susan Rice has always been circling, at the center of all of this. I used to quote the line from Usual Suspects. I'm telling you that Susan Rice is protected on high by the Prince of Darkness himself, because she just goes off to go on the board of Netflix, right? Where the Obamas get millions of dollars to do movies with a wealth of experience. But lay this out in terms of how the net is tightening around Obama with players like Rice.
Yeah, so I don't know if your viewers recall the infamous CYA memo to file note that she wrote as she was departing from the White House, and it was conveniently written to cover their tracks and lay a record down in the National Archives saying, "Oh, everything we did was by the book." Actually, the phrase she used, Obama, everything he did was by the book. He asked the FBI, Comey, and Brennan to go forward doing everything by the book, any investigations. Well, it turns out what they were really doing was first of all, they knew what was coming, and what was coming was they had set a perjury trap for General Flynn. And they were basically trying to get rid of Donald Trump's incoming president's national security advisor, who was key. It was key because he had access to all of the things that they had done. He would have had a roadmap to where all the bodies were buried in this scandal to get Trump. And so they had to put a note to file to say, "Oh, we did everything clean on this."
Yeah, we always see Democrats go out and project onto the Republicans what they think is actually, oh, if we say we're doing it, no, that the Republicans are the bad ones, they're doing it. And they always deflect back to them. And it's just something that we see throughout history. And I just look at this and say, okay, they tried to take Donald Trump down before he ever even assumed the office of the president of the United States. Now just go through like what that actually means for a country, for a nation, that they would do this before somebody actually becomes the sitting president, and trying to take him down with all of the intelligence, because that is such a key part of, are we going to trust the government or not with this intel?
I mean, it's tantamount to what banana republics, police states do to their political opponents, and that's what they did, orchestrated from the top down, White House down, against Trump, and at the same time they went easy on the other candidate, Hillary Clinton, who they wanted to assume power. They wanted her in office. They wanted to stop Trump from getting into office and getting into power. And now we're finding out from another batch of declassified documents that DOJ recently declassified, that Comey, the FBI director, Obama's FBI director, actually covered up no fewer than 8 thumb drives with Hillary Clinton's emails. Obama's emails were also on there. These were classified, some of them emails, thousands of them. They had been compromised by a foreign adversary, and yet Comey opted not to investigate or examine any of them. We're now finding this out from yesterday's drop of declassified documents. And then he also buried a report that he got in that Attorney General Loretta Lynch was communicating allegedly with the Clinton campaign to fix the investigation into her emails and her illegal unsecured basement server. And Comey didn't open an investigation of that. Instead, he opened an investigation of Trump based on Clinton's political dirt, the dossier. So that's just more data points in this conspiracy of corruption. They disparate treatment in investigations. They whitewashed Hillary and they framed him, went after him hard, persecuted him. So that's just another part of this broader conspiracy that they're looking at FBI and DOJ.
So when it comes to that broader conspiracy, I think the concern that that I have, and I think many in our audience have, is, okay, well, we're going to pursue this how? Everyone wants to see prosecutions. All Jill wants for Christmas are perp walks, as she says.
Don't blame me.
But the problem here is, how are you going to prosecute these people, and what would this case look like, and who would you go after? Do you have any thoughts about what the details of this might be?
Well, all we know, I mean, this is going to be ambitious, absolutely, but it's not pie in the sky. They could look at it. There's a number of statutes that they can file under, and there will be a large list of co-conspirators. But, they could do conspiracy to defraud the government, deprivation of rights, conspiracy to commit perjury. They all gave the same testimony, false testimony, that the dossier had nothing to do with the ICA. So we know that's false from the emails that we now have declassified, the internal emails. And also conspiracy to obstruct justice, because we understand that there was another whistleblower. There are whistleblowers at ODNI that are emerging. And there was one at the FBI who evidently led Kash Patel to this cache or stash of hidden incriminating evidence that they put in a safe room at headquarters, hoping no one would ever find it. This is computer media. There's also paper documentation. We're told that it is stuff on Comey, Brennan, Jack Smith. So what we do know is that they have a case. There is a case file number, and there was an EC that was written that officially opens the investigation, and they have assigned it to a field office. So that's where they are now, as we understand it. And now they have to look for a venue that's going to have a grand jury that can look at all this material with an open mind, because District of Columbia, of course, is 90% Democrat, a lot of Trump haters, so they're not going to get a fair hearing there. So they have to find somewhere where they can try this, like Florida, Palm Beach County, for instance, which is much more Trump friendly, of course, than DC.
Well, I think a lot of people would love to see that actually happen, and will be waiting for it. I mean, this is the original sin of the deep state against really the rise of Trump over the last 10 years, as you well know. What's been surprising to me is the reaction on the part of many people, some of them, on the right. So National Review's Andy McCarthy, I mean, his line was, "No new light is shed on this Russiagate episode by Gabbard's email disclosures." Could you respond to that? It's a bit puzzling and maybe even troubling.
Yeah, Andy, as a former prosecutor, is usually good at litigating this stuff, but he has an action right against Tulsi Gabbard, first of all. He does not like her. And so I think he got a little emotional there, and it's clear from his analysis, his long column, that he did at National Review, he did not actually look at the 114 pages of declassified documents, because if he had, he would have noticed that there was or the CIA document that preceded that, the internal CIA review that Radcliffe put out, because he claimed that the dossier was just attached as an annex, when it's clear from the declassified documents that it was included in the body, the text of the intelligence community assessment that Obama had ordered, to back as a bullet point supporting the most controversial radioactive conclusion in that assessment, which was that Vladimir Putin had personally intervened in our election to help Trump beat Hillary Clinton. And that's outrageous that her political dirt would be dressed up as intelligence and put into an official U.S. intelligence document. And so Andy missed that. He missed a number of things that were in Tulsi Gabbard's dossier document dump, those 114 pages, whereby it turns out that there was a whistleblower from DNI. He said there was nothing new. Well, there was this whistleblower he didn't mention. That was in the very back of the document of 114 pages. You have to read it all to find it. And quite frankly, Tulsi should have highlighted that in her talking points. However, this whistleblower stated that before the election, he was in charge of the Russia assessment. And then after the election, he was told, "Oh, everything that you thought was low confidence and weak, for instance, Putin helping Trump, we found new evidence. Magically, voila, we have this new evidence, and we're changing your assessment from low confidence to high confidence." And he says, "Well, what's the new evidence?" And they said, "Trust us. We have it. You just have to trust us." And so they told him to stand down when he objected. And so he was shunted aside. He was taken off the drafting. And so he's a whistleblower. There are a number of other whistleblowers, we understand, and they've been referred to DOJ, and they will get affidavits from them. They will get depositions, and then they will present them to a grand jury to help them build their case of conspiracy of corruption.
I mean, it's hard to even believe, right? You wouldn't believe it in the script if the intel, the great almighty intel community looks and goes, "Just trust me, bro. Just trust me on this one."
That's one of the things that we want to do here on this show, is just shed light on the deep state and make sure that they don't get away with everything. And I think it's interesting to note, a few weeks ago, you'll remember Tulsi Gabbard, they were like, "Oh, is she in the Situation Room? Is she not in the Situation Room?" And they were trying to just go out there and, just go, okay, what's the situation like right now with Tulsi and the admin? And now you see all these documents coming to light. So the fight on the deep state, Paul, is definitely on right now in a huge way.
Oh, yeah. They're grasping at straws. They're trying to, the Democrats spin and the media spin is now, "Oh, well, this is just, we're going to shoot the messenger. Tulsi Gabbard's just doing this because she was on the outs with Trump and she's trying to get back in, get into his good favor." And so that's not true at all. The other thing is they're trying to spin out there is that this was just a big distraction that they cobbled together at the last minute to distract from the Jeffrey Epstein files debacle. Well, no, that's not true. From her office, I understand that this has been in the works, they said, for a long time. And that would make sense, 114 pages of documents. And another thing that was convincing was they told me that they have assembled a team, an entire team of people that are devoted to declassification for this purpose, to get this stuff to DOJ, to build this case. And this team is actually using, this is interesting, they're using AI, artificial intelligence, to go through to help them aggregate all of these documents, going through classified and unclassified networks across the entire 18 intelligence agencies that Tulsi Gabbard has authority over. And they're trying to collect all these relevant emails through AI. So this is just the first wave of documents that they're putting out. There's going to be thousands of more documents that are going to be coming down the pipe.
Yeah, Paul, we have heard the same thing. I'm so glad that you said that here on the show. Thanks so much for all the information. It's been really helpful.
Great to be with you.
All right, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to look back at Ghislaine Maxwell. What do you think is going to happen next? This is a Bedford-free block, so we can go back and talk about Epstein and Maxwell all we want. Representative Anna Paulina Luna announced the House Oversight Committee has subpoenaed Ghislaine Maxwell, so I asked you on X, will anything actually come from this? What do you think happens next? So let's get into some of the best replies. David said, nothing. I expect nothing. What do you want to see? Beans spilled, but based on trends, I expect nothing. David, I wish you're wrong. I'm hoping you're wrong, but I don't think you're wrong.
David sounds like me at 2 o'clock in the morning when my wife catches me in the back fridge getting a beer. Nothing to see here. Look, this is our worst fear, right? Everyone expects nothing. So maybe the bar is low, the bar is low. Nothing. That is the bar. That's what we've come to expect.
We can trip over the bar right now. It is so low. Well, let's go ahead and get to John. He replied that just more disappointment, but we're used to that from the Republican leadership. All talk, no action. That is what we are used to seeing is a lot of strongly worded memos and not a lot of actually doing the things.
I'm going to write a letter to the editor. I'm going to write a letter to the editor-in-chief about this. Very upset. Yes.
You're going to write a letter to yourself?
That's what they do. They write letters to the editors.
Or we can write one to Jim Jordan and maybe he'll get something done.
We could write him a letter about writing letters and see what happens.
He loves to write the letters. Okay, let's wrap this up. Terms Against Humanity closes us out. He says that it will become a salacious reality show. It might even rival and put Tiger King to shame. This is government, after all. Now, I wanted this one to be last. Because it is, right? It's like bread and circuses. We are making sure, are you not entertained, right? This is what we're dealing with right now is the back and forth. Are we going to get the Epstein files? Are we not? Are we ever going to learn what's happening? I don't know, but aren't you entertained?
Yeah, well, Terms Against Humanity, he's going with the Elon option, right? The Elon option is whatever's most entertaining is most likely in this environment. And I have to say, this environment, as I'll keep saying, everything happens all the time. So the big picture here is, yes, the Republicans are feckless. They've never done anything. They don't do anything. All these problems, we get it. We're all there. But look at what is actually happening. I mean, it is years later, and we are talking all show about Russia collusion, about Epstein, about actually putting Maxwell up there. That will be a show. I'm all here for it. I'm like the emperor in the Gladiator memes. Just like, yes, let's see, let them fight, let her come out, let a little chaos out there, give some bloodletting. This is what the White House needed to do. The big picture, though, is prosecutions or not, it's often hard to prosecute people, after the fact. As Bedford and others said on the show earlier, it's really hard to put together a case years after the fact. But the real prosecution, and I agree that above all, people need to be prosecuted if we're going to save our democracy. You're going to save democracy, your sacred democracy, you're going to have to throw people in jail. You're going to have to seek to prosecute them to the full extent of the law in order to reestablish the rule of law in the United States of America. That I 100% agree with. But there is a larger picture and another way to prosecute people and punish wrongdoing, and that is telling the truth and making sure that everyone knows it. And when you look at the larger picture of what we just did here on the show today, Jill, what's going on here? People are trying to reestablish a true narrative of events of what actually occurred when it comes to Epstein and when it comes to Russia collusion and what they did to Trump over the last 10 years. And the battle right now in America, after we won, is establishing the truth about the last 10 years.
Winning has consequences. You go through and you actually get to write the history books, or AI will be writing the history books with whatever they want to say. But until we get to that point, the winners are still going to be writing history. It is such an important point because I think that in any other Republican administration even, right, insert random Republican into the White House right now, we aren't talking about any of this. What Paul Sperry was just saying at the very end of that segment with him, well, Tulsi Gabbard has a group that is going through at the president's directive saying, I want you to look into X, Y, and Z, and I want you to come at me with the truth, and you're going to go through and you're going to declassify a ton of documents. This is actually truth taking place. Listen, is it happening with Epstein right now? We don't know. But is it actually happening within the administration right now? Yeah. We can tell you that for a fact.
Yeah, exactly right. And Jill, you're so right about this. I mean, not everyone in the administration, right? We're not going to say wants all the truth to come out about everything. There's a lot of people who are still on the old Washington clock where, nothing ever happens and you hide everything for whatever God knows reason, right? But Tulsi Gabbard is a disruptor. What she's doing is something is happening. She is pushing stuff out. Steve Baker will have an article on this saying exactly what Paul said earlier. This was not a distraction from Epstein. This is part of a plan that has been in the works for a while where they're slowly laying out a case. And so this is not business as usual. These are people who are actually getting to the bottom of the truth. And again, what's important is that the entire country has to grapple with what the truth was because the media, dominated. They spent all that money on Colbert and everything else, didn't care if they were losing all this money. Why? Because they wanted to establish a narrative of this is what the facts are, this is the truth, and Trump colluded with Russia and yada, 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 and you couldn't say otherwise. What's happening now is refuting that with the truth, with the power of the administration, and with media, dare I say it, like shows like The Mandate, where people are all of a sudden waking up to the fact that this isn't a partisan point, these are facts, and they're being pushed out. And that's what the war is now. It's retaking the high ground of media to establish the truth. And you need people in government like Tulsi to do that. And she's dedicated. She doesn't care. Who cares if Andy McCarthy at National Review doesn't like her? I mean, that's a retarded reason for disagreeing and not paying attention and doing her job and reading the files she put out. But those people on the right are done. They're over with. They're passé. And all the energy and action is with the people who actually want to bring that truth out there.
And it's important to note that the legacy media is still not covering the Russia collusion hoax. It was on A15 of the New York Times. The Washington Post didn't even put the story out. They are not going to let the truth out in the legacy media. That is not where you need to be looking for the truth. But it is going to be hard to reach your normie friends who are saying, haven't heard anything about this. I don't know. You know what? That must all be a lie because it's not in legacy media.
Yes. Now, the good news is the legacy media is dying, right? And the good news is people like Colbert are going off air because they can't afford to keep pushing like they were and spend all these billions and billions of dollars on propaganda that doesn't work. So it's kind of like an empty space out there. So now is the time for people like us to really push hard because there's an opening right now for your normie friend mind. And what you see is they're retreating. They're retreating.
The shift is on. It's a hockey line change. Everybody in, everybody out. We're here. We're here at Blaze TV to welcome everybody in. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow.